What if I tell you that this is crochet? Mic drop. Hey there, and welcome to the Totally Fierce Crochet channel. My name's Thomas, and how come no one has ever told me that you can do something like this, something that looks like knitting with crochet? But don't worry, now that I know, I'm of course going to tell you all about it and how you can make such beautiful pieces with crochet. You don't need any experience with knitting, and we all know my talent for knitting goes right to zero. And I can tell you already, it's super addictive. But before we are going to dive right into this tutorial, here's a little story about how I found out that something like this is possible with crochet. If you don't like any stories, then feel free to skip, but here it is. So a few weeks ago, a subscriber of mine, Neil, hi Neil, suggested me to make a waistcoat. And by the time I had no idea what a waistcoat was, so of course I googled it and found out that it's sort of a vest. And at the time I was still busy with other projects, so I saved the idea on my hard drive up there under future crochet projects, and I stopped thinking about it until a few days later while browsing Facebook. There was a little preview just having the word waistcoat in there, and I was curious and I was like, what is this? I mean, we all know the internet is listening all the time. So I clicked on it and saw a video of someone crocheting a hat or a beanie using the waistcoat stitch to create a pattern that looked like knitting. So of course my creative mind was like, I have to try this. So I went to YouTube, watched some tutorials, and then basically just created a festive Christmas pattern, this one here, to make myself a loop, because I thought that would be the easiest project to do, to try this technique and this stitch out. And what can I say? I mean, I'm so blown away by how awesome this looks. It really does look like knitting, but it's not. And the inside looks super messy, just like it would do for some knitting projects as well. So thank you, Neil, for the inspiration. So that was the little story, and up until then I'm quite obsessed with this waistcoat stitch. And for me, this really is some sort of a problem solver, because I always wanted to make design patterns, and with crochet and the stitches, it's not always that simple, and we all know how beautiful patterns look in knitting. So this really does it for me. And of course, I made a few designs. So for this tutorial, I am not only going to show you how to make the waistcoat stitch, you will also get a PDF with multiple designs in there, and of course my original loop scarf design. But for this tutorial, we are going a little bit smaller in size, but super easy, and we are going to make some Scandinavian headbands. Woohoo! And I can't wait to show you how this works. So here we go. Okay, so let's dive right into it so I can show you how to make this super beautiful crochet technique. First up, make sure to download the PDF in the description, where you will find some more detailed information about the waistcoat stitch and how to make beautiful patterns like this. And of course, you get the full pattern for the loop scarf here, the one that I showed you also in the intro sequence. And as you can see, I mean, this is just beyond beautiful, and it 100% looks like knitting, but it's not. And you will also find the pattern for the Scandinavian headband or ear warmers. There are always some yarn recommendations, hook recommendations, and some little written instructions so you can follow along without watching the whole video, but of course I'm going to tell you all about it in this tutorial. So as I mentioned, we will do a headband. Here was my test piece that I made to see how this would work. It turned out a bit too wide or too high, but I mean, this you could still use as like a little loop scarf around your neck. That's no problem at all. But personally, for the head, I thought it would have been too high, so I alternated it. But look how beautiful it is. I'm absolutely speechless, and I'm so excited to show you how to make this. So for our headband, let's go to the page number 3 of the PDF. This is the headband we are going to make. In the graph, you will also always see the numbers for each of the rounds. And in the lower part, you will see for left-handed and for right-handed, so you can easily follow along the pattern. And as a yarn, I'm going to use the exact same yarn that I used for the loop scarf, because I still had some leftovers from this basic soft acrylic yarn. So you can, of course, make it in any medium-sized yarn that you have. It can be wool, it can be alpaca, it can be merino, whatever you have, just something that would also keep your ears warm. And this is why I'm going to use this yarn, and the red will be my main color, and then the white will be to create the pattern of the design. Then I'm going to use a 5.5 millimeter hook. Even though here it says the hook recommendation is a 4 millimeter, I'm sizing it up mainly because the waistcoat stitch is a bit of a tighter stitch, and you always work it with 2 yarn strands at once. So it's always good to have it a little bit more loose, and also the stitch itself works better when it is worked a little bit more on the loose side to have like a bit of a more drape. And of course you have like a beautiful squishy texture as well. Then of course for the very end, a yarn needle and the scissors, and what would be helpful would be to have some stitch markers, because we are always going to repeat the pattern, and this pattern always has 14 stitches before we then repeat the same sequence over and over again until we have the right length for our headband. And we are going to place a stitch marker in every 14th stitch, just so we know where we are, and that later on we can always see which of those squares we have to fill either with the red or the white color. But I'm going to show you everything into detail in this tutorial. So let's start with our headband. I'm going to pick my red colored yarn, and we are going to start with an I-cord. Of course, if you don't want to make it with an I-cord, of course, feel free to make it with a chain. But as far as I'm concerned, of course, I'm going with the I-cord, and for that I'm going to take the yarn and I'm going to wrap it around my head 3 times. So I almost know how much yarn I would need for my I-cord. So this now is 3 times my head size basically, and this is where I will place my slip knot to start. So I have a longer tail of yarn to the side, and the other part goes to my yarn ball as always. And now I'm going to start with my I-cord, and since we have a pattern that always repeats after 14 stitches. I will place a stitch marker in every 14th stitch, and we do this until we basically can wrap it around our head. Not too tight, not too loose, but we'll see how many stitches we will get because each head is individual. So now I start with my I-cord. First, I take the yarn end part and wrap it around from the front. Then take the other yarn and pull it around from the back, and then pull that last loop through the two loops on my hook. And like this, I'm continuing along. And even in the first round, make sure to have it a little bit more loose, not too tight, just so that in the end you have like the right tension for the stitches, and of course the right tension for your headband around your head. And let's just make the first 14 stitches. Of course, I'm talking again and not counting at all, so I will just count them down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and here we go, 14 stitches. And again, the great thing about the I-cord method is that you can easily place a stitch marker just in the bottom of your work, so later on you can just keep it there and continue. So those are my first 14 stitches. I will just continue, and I hope you are too. Always adding 14 stitches and then stop right at the point where it would fit nicely around your head, including the ears. And again, not too tight, not too loose. And I'll meet you once I have my size ready for this first round. So here we go. I have about the size of my head. I'm just checking it one more time to see if it really fits. And like this, I will end up having the same pattern 5 times. So your head is probably smaller than mine. So you just take the amount of stitches that you got. If you happen to be in between like the 14 stitches, like on stitch number 7 or stitch number 4, it's all right. Just place the stitch marker in the last stitch and just stop the pattern where your round ends. This, of course, will leave you to a visible seam, and then the pattern will not go all along. But I feel like this is like a small price to pay for such a beautiful piece. You could also then make, let's say you have 4 stitches in the end, you can make them all in the same color without continuing the pattern. That is fine as well. Just do as you wish. I'm pretty sure you will make more than just one of those beautiful headbands. For this tutorial, I'm really focusing more on the technique. So in the end, you are free to create whatever pattern you might like. And now we are going to close the ring. And I'm just going to make sure that it is not twisted. So I'm going to my very first stitch, which is right here. And I'm just going to place my hook in that very first stitch. And first up, to connect it, I'm going to yarn over and make a simple slip stitch, just so I know it's connected right there. And then I will go back into the same stitch, yarn over and pull it through. 2 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through 2. So we just started with a single crochet, and the full round will be all single crochets. And what I'm going to do, because I still have my yarn end from the I-cord here, I am going to bring it into my work so I can sew it in already. And the way we are going to do that, because for the I-cord, the last loop is always like in the bottom right here. So I'm going to take it from the bottom right into the same stitch where I placed my single crochet in, and I'm just going to pull that through. So I have that connected to my work as well. You can release the yarn needle and you just have it carried along with you for the first round, and so later on you don't have to worry about the yarn end at all. And now we can continue by making single crochets all along. If you make your single crochets for this tutorial and for this waistcoat stitch, and you are usually used to work them with the yarn under, please make sure to have it worked with a yarn over, because this is absolutely mandatory to later on get those V-shaped stitches. So always yarn over for the single crochet. So you go in the stitch, yarn over, pull the yarn through 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, and pull through 2 loops. And we will go all along. Feel free to count the stitches while you go along from stitch marker to stitch marker, just to be sure that you always have the 14 stitches. And I will meet you once I'm at the end of this first round of single crochets, and then we can start with the official round number 1, where we then make our waistcoat stitches. So here we go. I'm one time around with single crochets, and maybe you can already see those little V's coming out already. They're right here. So always where 2 stitches meet, right in here, you get the little V's. And this is also very important for the upcoming rounds, because now we are ready to start with our waistcoat stitch. If you still have a leftover yarn, just leave it where it is, because now we are going directly into the first round of our pattern with the waistcoat. With the waistcoat stitch, I always say west coast, but it's waistcoat. And to get a seamless transition from one round to another round, here's a little trick on how to do that. So you release the loop from your hook, then you take your hook, and we are going right in between those first 2 stitches right here, and we are going to place our hook in there like this. Then grab the yarn gently to not lose that loop up here, and yarn over and pull the yarn through. Now you have like an additional loop right here in front, and we are going to keep that. And then we go in the top of the next stitch right here, take this loop and pull it over your hook and pull it through. Now push everything a bit together like this. You can still drag on that loop a little bit in the front to make it a little bit shorter. Now release the hook again and go from the front in this front loop and then again into the small one. Drag on the yarn over and pull it through. And like that, I think you can see it, we created a V stitch on top of our first stitch from the first round. And like that, we can directly start with our waistcoat stitch. Don't worry if this was too fast, or maybe I just open it and show it to you again, because this is definitely a crucial part in terms of getting a seamless look and feel. So let's do it again. First up, we are going to release the hook from the loop and pull it up a bit longer. Then we are going to insert the hook right underneath the first 2 stitches of the previous round and pull it in there. Then yarn over and gently pull the loop through like this. You can leave it here in front. Then we go in the top of the second stitch, which is right here. So here's the first one, here's the second, and insert the hook from the back. Then we are going to take our first loop and put it over the hook and pull it to the back. And now we push everything towards the end of the previous round. Now we drag on our yarn so that this smaller loop right here gets a bit smaller. Then we release it and hold it with our fingers. Now we go into the front loop and from there in the smaller loop. You can now also drag on the yarn to have like a smaller loop in front. Then yarn over and pull through both of the loops to get the typical V shape, and you already made the first stitch of the first real pattern round. And from there we can continue all along with waistcoat stitches, and for that we are always going in between the 2 stitches. You can see the V right here, and we are going just in between those 2. If it is a bit tighter in the beginning, don't worry. Yarn over, pull the yarn through and make a single crochet, and here you have the next V-shaped stitch. Let's do one more. We go in between the stitches, yarn over, pull it through. Make sure to really keep this a bit loose. Yarn over and pull through. And here's the next V. And like this, we continue. Trust me, this will get so much easier once you have made a few. And then you will always see those beautiful V stitches coming out. So always yarn over, pull the yarn through, have everything nice and loose, super relaxed. Yarn over and pull through 2. And here's the next V. And we do this all along. The full first round is always a solid color round, so no changes of color, just making sure we have all our beautiful V stitches that in the end, of course, look like knitting. So I'll meet you at the end of this first waistcoat round. So I made it all the way through, and here's how it looks like. I think you can already see that it looks a lot like knitting. And since we're at the end of the round, you know what that means. The funny transition part starts again. So pull the loop out a little bit, and then we are going in between this nice V-stitch like this, and then we yarn over and pull the loop through without destroying the other one, this one here, and then we go in the top of the second stitch right here, and then we are going to place the loop right there, pull it through, push everything together, and then drag on it so that your loop gets smaller. And then we are going to take our hook out, hold the small loop, grab the big one, then grab the small one again, pull on the yarn over, and pull through both to get like the beautiful transition. And let's check our pattern. So shame on me, I just realized that having it like this for both left hand and right hand won't work. So I'm just quickly going to update the page so you have each design for left-handed and for right-handed separately, because then I'm just going to mirror this whole pattern so we can always start with the same color. So sorry again, I'm going to update. Welcome back to this rather messy tutorial. Again, I'm sorry, but now it should work. The PDF is updated. You always have each design, one for left hand and one for right hand, and like that we all start the same way. So just as a recap, we just made the first stitch of the second round. For left-handed it's red, and for right-handed it's red as well. Woohoo! So where's my piece? It's right here. So here we go. Our first V of the second round is already there, and as you can see in the pattern, the next stitch is going to be a white one. So we have our first color change, and for that I'm going to pick the white, and from now on we are also going to take this white yarn with us, or whatever color yarn you have chosen. And to change the color, it goes the same way for all the color changes. You go in the next waistcoat stitch right here, then we just place the next color on our hook and pull it through. And now we hold it right there because we are going to finish each of those stitches again with our main color. So you yarn over, in my case with the red, and pull it through, and like that you get the first V in the second color. And we are also going to pull that second color, that loop, a bit upwards because we are always incorporating it. And now, according to the pattern, we now have two red waistcoat stitches. So we go into our next V, grab the yarn, pull it through, have the white yarn in between, yarn over and finish the stitch, and then one more, and here we go. the next one, and then we can already start with our next white stitch. So we go into the next waistcoat stitch. Now we grab the white, pull it through, and use the red to close it. And here we go, we have the second. Then we continue with red. 1 and 2. Then we make the next white one, so we go in the next stitch, take the white, pull it through, yarn over with red, and close the stitch. And now we already have 3 little white V's. In total we need 5, and then the pattern repeats. So let's continue. 2 red stitches, and then we switch to white and finish it with red. Then two red, and we reach the last stitch of this segment, because now we are already at our stitch marker, and that tells us that this first sequence is done. And now we can simply repeat exactly the same thing that we did right here. So we start in the next stitch with red, with our color 1, and then we make the next white one and continue all along. So now we have 2 red, 1 white, 2 red, 1 white, 2 red, 1, 2, 1, and then we repeat with our first red stitch, just like in the pattern. And to be honest, that is basically it. You just continue along the pattern, making the different colored stitches with the waistcoat stitch always going into the V. Now you can probably already tell that it's much easier now to work into those stitches, because you can see where the V is, and then just place your hook in the middle of the V and push it through, like I did it here, and then just alternating whatever color you have, you pull it through, and then closing the stitch with your main color. And of course, in the end, and don't worry, there won't be a lot of twisting and turning with the yarn, because by always finishing with the red, you will always have the yarn on the right side. So no issues here. And you can then just continue. Let me just finish this second sequence, because now I already know that once I reach a stitch marker, it's the end, and our last stitch of this sequence is a white one. And just like that, I mean, look how pretty this is, and this is crochet. So you continue along all the way, always keeping both yarns with you. And just in case you were wondering, the back isn't that pretty, actually. So you definitely have a good side here, which is the front side. The back side has like all the yarn pieces that we are pulling with us, but I mean, for a headband, it doesn't have to be reversible. So you always have one super pretty side, and that's how it is. And I will meet you maybe sometime in between to see where you are. Take your time. This really is like more a slower crochet stitch, because you also have to be careful in terms of not making any mistakes in the pattern. And so take your time. I will most probably come back to you to show you what to do when the round starts with the second color, but this will take a while, at least until we reach round number 7. And see you later. Bye. So welcome back. I'm at row number 7, or I just finished row number 6. And now we come to the first time that we will start a round with a white stitch. And I will show you how to do that, because the only difference is that the first loop that we are going to pull through the first V of the round, instead of having it in the same color like our main colored yarn, we are just pulling that loop through with the white. So we go in there, pull the white over the hook and pull it through. So here we have our loop, and the rest is then the same like we had it before. So we release the loop, go in the top of the first stitch, pull it over our hook, make sure we don't lose the white loop, pull everything to the side. We can now also shorten it, and then release it, take the white loop, take the loop from the back, and yarn over with our main color. And like that we started with a white stitch, and from there we can continue like we had it before. I hope you are still doing well, and I hope you see how beautiful and almost identical to a knitting project this looks. And carry on. I will meet you once you reached row or round number 15, so we can finish it off together. So have fun, and I will see you. Welcome back. So I just finished round number 15 of our pattern, and now there's just one round left, and we can also cut the second colored yarn. In my case, that's the white, because the last round will just be one solid round to match our beginning in terms of the height. And we do it exactly the same way. We start the last round with the invisible transition. By now you should be familiar with it, or at least I hope so. And then we can have one final round with our waistcoat stitch all along, and I'll meet you once you're at the end to show you how to finish it off. And here we go, the last round of waistcoat stitches, chain 1, and then we can cut our yarn and pull the yarn through. And since we had an invisible transition, let's make an invisible finish. So it looks great. So here's our slip stitch, and we are not going into the first one, we are going into the second stitch from the hook and pull it and pull the yarn through from the front, and then take your yarn needle and pull it in the back loop of the stitch. Pull everything together so that you get like similar stitches on top. Now just sew in the yarn end in the back or on the inside of your work, just like this, going through a few of those stitches. That should be enough, and then we go back a few stitches just so we know it's all in there. And don't pull it too tight because you still want to have it a bit flexible, because you still have to put it over your head. Here's like a little bit of the white. I just cut that. You could of course always incorporate it as well. Then for the red yarn here from the beginning, we already pulled it along for one round so we can cut it, and the white yarn we are just going to sew that in. Now we only have the stitch markers left. Of course you don't want to walk around with stitch markers, although it wouldn't be my first time wearing something that I made and still having a stitch marker somewhere in, so you can do it. And that was it. Your beautiful headband is done, looking exactly like it was knitting, and it is seamless. You don't see where the beginning and the end is. I mean, this is just absolutely awesome. And as a little surprise, in the meantime, I also made this pattern here, the one here at the bottom, so you get to see how this will look like. I mean, isn't this just absolutely amazing? And I also love the color. I had this yarn for a while, and it's also a little bit smaller, and I used a 4.5 millimeter hook. It's also a bit wider, mainly because here when you have a bigger hook, then it stretches out a little bit more, and this one is more solid, so feel free to experiment to find a way that you like best. And by the way, if you still want to, this one looks quite funny on the inside. It looks like the sky in the middle of the night. If you still prefer to have like a reversible headband, you can always continue and just double up the pattern and then fold it inside and make a seam in the bottom, so you can then always flip it. But interestingly, this doesn't look that uninteresting as well, so might as well wear this inside out. But of course, this design like this looks so much better. Isn't this beyond beautiful? And it's so simple to make. I am just so obsessed. Here's the other one. This is so pretty. Those colors, I mean, they are everything. I think now you all want to see how the headband will look on me. Of course, I will show you, even though my hair will probably look messy underneath this, but so what? And now I look like a Scandinavian skier or snowboarder or whatever. It fits beautifully, it's not too thick, it has the right size, and I absolutely love it. This, of course, would be more my personal style, so this is something that I could wear all year basically. It also looks kind of hip-hop, do you think? So thank you so much for watching. I hope you will have fun making lots of things with the waistcoat stitch for yourself or for Christmas as a gift. I mean, who doesn't want to have like a fabulous headband like this, right? And of course, I hope to see you back again next time, only at the Totally Fierce Crochet channel. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next video. Bye!